Outsiders, we have exciting news for you. As of this episode going forward, we are now part of the Batman Podcasting Network. We are so excited to be a part of this new Bat family, and we hope you check out our new sibling shows.
Yay!
Beware the fandom where Bat Bros are ready to fight. Enter an obsessive and a Bat acolyte. TJ, Chris, and our academic guest are ready to put the Court of Owls to the test. Will Scott Snyder slide down the spectrum with this one, or will he rise to the level of James Tynion? If sometimes DC fandom makes you lose your head, consider joining the Gotham Outsiders instead, because those trying to bring toxicity to our fandom, beware. Like the court itself, us outsiders are everywhere. Welcome to the Gotham Outsiders special 10th episode!
Chris, I think you found your true calling. Just drop out of your doctorate right now.
I mean, come over to get that MFA.
I will say, so we have returning guest Stephen Leyva, and I will say, I didn't realize you were a poet when I did this. I may have felt more intimidated if I had known that.
I was scanning in my mind. Very good use of rhythm and meter.
Thank you.
Was that inspired by the Court of Owls rhyme?
Of course it was.
Wow, that was so much effort. I appreciate it.
That's what I did instead of studying for my finals. It's fine.
Well, this was a reread for me. Today we're doing the Court of Owls Saga, which is issues 1 through 11 of Scott Snyder's run.
Yes, finally the Snyder run, which was my first introduction to Batman. So, in the comics.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I mean, you hit it right at a giant reboot of everything.
Yes. Which
the marketing worked.
It sure did. But before we dive in, we have our first ever trivia rematch.
Ooh.
Will TJ actually win one? We'll find out.
In my corner, we have TJ. And in the other corner, we have Steven. I'm wearing a Court of Owls mask.
Ooh, very spooky.
Oh, wow. A resurrection to come, right?
Yes. TJ is unkillable, just a warning. So in honor of this being our 10th episode, our trivia is also going to be a little different. I'm going to give you 3 questions, and you will have to compete to see who can get the closest to naming 10 of these things. Though you don't have to hit exactly 10, just in case it's not possible.
Okay.
AKA who can hit the most. But hopefully we can get up to 10. So we're going to start with who can name the closest to 10 of Bruce Wayne's love interests.
Oh, Vicky Vale.
He's just going at it.
Yeah.
I mean, are we okay? Sidebar: are we across all media or just it within comics?
Go for it.
Okay, Vicky Vale, Chase Meridian.
Ooh.
What's her name from Mask of the Phantasm? But the Phantasm lady.
I'll accept that.
Spoilers, by the way.
Mrs. Phantasm.
So what? That's 3. Okay. Batwoman. We talked about
before she was his cousin. Yes.
Right. Okay. Selena Kyle.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh gosh. There's.
Do you want to call a friend? Because I have one.
Ooh,
go for it.
So Jezebel from the Grant Morrison run. I just recently read some of that.
Oh yeah. I forget about her always.
Talia al Ghul.
Yeah.
Good one.
There's like a famous one that's got like silver in her name. It's not Silver Sable from Spider-Man, but it's like something. It's something like that. I can't.
Wait, are we collaborating on this one?
Go for it. Why not?
All right, we've hijacked the competition, and now we're working together.
Okay.
I'm thinking. Oh, Rachel Dawes from Batman Begins.
Oh, right. Yep.
I might be hitting my limit. I knew a couple of the other ones Steven had said. To be fair.
Yeah. I mean, there's Barbara Gordon.
They
I know.
definitely banged.
Oh my gosh! Come on, do we have to count that? Like,
I mean, unfortunately,
the Superman count.
Yes, that's 10.
Yay! Was that really 10? You kept track?
That was 10. Yeah.
Oh wow, we did it.
All right. Now, so apparently it's a collaboration. So the two of you together, can you name 10 obscure Batman villains? So no, we're not talking Joker.
Kite Man, Condiment Man.
Yep.
Yes.
The Clock King.
Clock King. Calendar Man.
Calendar Man. Yep.
Why do they all start with C?
Because we love alliteration.
Professor Pig, does he count?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll take Professor Pig.
Okay.
What's the how obscure do we? I mean,
it's clearly a very scientific metric of me saying yes or no when you say it.
Okay.
How many are we at right now?
You're at 5.
What about
Cat Lad?
Oh gosh.
Okay, I'll take it, even though it is only fandom.
Okay.
Well, Owlman.
Yeah.
I mean, this is related to Court of Owls in that kind of way. How about Mad Hatter?
I guess that's obscure. I'll take it.
On the
Man-Bat.
Okay.
I'll allow it.
Man-Bat?
No. Man-Bat's not that obscure.
I'm trying to think of the animated series that I've been watching.
Oh, what about Mr. Zaz?
I'll take Zaz. Yeah, I don't know if he's obscure, but we'll take it.
I feel like I reached my limit with Kite Man.
Hell yeah!
What do we need? Like 3 more?
I think. As I just realized that I was counting and then I stopped counting. I think you have 3 more.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of just straight up.
I have one that's recent.
Okay.
That she's popular, but it's the Joker's new girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Punchline.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's pretty obscure just because she's so new.
Yeah, that works.
Punchline and what about Black Mask?
Yeah, sure.
You're just like, all right, I'll give it to
At this point, I'm just helping you along.
One more. What about the Bat Ninjas from Grant Morrison's run?
Yes,
there you go.
Sure.
Yay! They're not a specific villain, but they are memorable.
Wait a minute. What about what's the person who's like a Cupid doll in Batman animated series that hangs out with Killer Croc?
Oh my gosh.
Who
why is that?
Why can I think of this this person?
I'm getting a mental image from Ben Kahn. It's Scarlet from Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin.
Oh, Scarlet is definitely obscure. I'll take that. I don't think that
so.
Scarlet is in the animated series, though. I think it's something else.
No. This was just Ben Kahn reaching through the ether.
Yes, their spirit is among us right now. Perfect. Okay. All right.
We did it.
Yes. So can the two of you together name 10 non-Gotham places that Batman is known to frequent? And I'll say Bat family is known to frequent.
Metropolis.
Yeah, that's kind of a big one.
When he goes to see his boyfriend, yes.
Star City.
Yeah.
Sure.
Central City.
Are we just naming places others?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I'll allow it, but I'm very entertained.
Markovia.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
I'm just naming other DC places I know.
Yeah, Themyscira.
I don't know if Batman is known to frequent
He's
Themyscira.
vacationed there on a long weekend.
They're always making exceptions. They're always like, no men on the island, except.
They're like, except this emotionally repressed gay man. He's fine.
He's asexual. Thank you very much.
Yes, I agree. Okay, that's 5. TJ, you've been reading Batman Incorporated. This literally about
they
going
can be
places.
real places. So
Yeah,
I know
sure.
he went to Tokyo.
Okay, yeah.
In the first couple issues.
That's a one he frequents pretty often, actually.
How about every Lazarus pit?
And there's one of those in London, which was in Batman and Robin 2.
I can't believe neither one of you have mentioned the place that Batman is always trying to run off to.
Oh, Paris.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, true.
In movies, in comics, he's always trying to run off to Paris for some reason.
Can you blame him?
No, it sounds great. All right, 2 more.
Oh gosh. What's the where all the League of Assassins people live?
I know, that's what I was trying to think of too.
Is it Nanda Parbat? Where I forget what the heck it's called.
That is a great question that I don't have readily an answer for. I was trying to think too, and my brain immediately went to Batman Begins, and I was like, the Himalayas.
Right.
But I don't know actually where it is in the comics.
Can I just say Europe? He definitely. Oh, what about the Himalayas? Is that
that's
a
what
place?
I just said, but yes.
I don't know
He was so deep in thought he didn't hear me say that literal word.
I'm trying to think in Batman Begins when he goes all over the world.
All right,
where
if
the
you
hell was
one
he?
more.
Well, where's the Hall of Justice? Isn't it in DC? So maybe DC.
Oh yeah,
we'll take the Hall of
DC.
Justice. I would have also accepted space.
Nice. Yeah.
And because I can feel Christopher Morse in the room shouting at Bloodhaven, which is
that was too easy. I should have got that.
What about Apocalypse? Isn't that a place?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and New Genesis. Yeah, come on.
There we go. There we go.
Now we're getting deep in the Kirby, New Gods.
We've redeemed ourselves now.
You have. I would have also accepted the island that Bane is supposed to be from, and I realized I forgot what it was called.
Santa Prisca.
There we go.
Yeah, and sidebar, Baby Doll is that character I was thinking of.
Yes, thank you.
That teams up with Killer Croc. So
there we go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's next?
Was that it?
I love this.
that was it. That was the 3 questions, and because you worked together, I suppose you both won.
Hey, how's that feel, TJ?
I tied again. It's a great feeling.
You did some heavy lifting there. Let's give TJ the win.
Yeah, he came up with some pretty obscure ones. I like it.
There's no way I would have hit 10 on any of those, but together we did it.
What we have learned.
Kite Man is worth all 10.
Again, hell yeah.
Oh my gosh. Firefly, Killer Moth, now they're all coming to me. Jesus Christ.
Tonight you'll wake up in the middle of the night and just be shouting the names of Bat villains.
Oh God.
Mother,
Night Terrors.
Right, jeez.
Talon,
goodness gracious.
I know, the book we just read.
Right.
And on that note, let's get into the meat of the book. Thank you for adding the sound effect that will be added later.
Yeah. So I feel like we can start with the introduction that was in the Saga volume that I read.
Oh yes, I definitely read that and didn't skip right past it.
I skimmed it. I did skim it. But I thought it was interesting that this story came to Scott Snyder in the form of being a Dick Grayson story. And then from there, he kind of broadened it to being about Bruce and Gotham as a city. And, it just kind of snowballed from there. So I thought it was interesting that Snyder has such a hard-on for Dick Grayson like everyone else.
I mean, he does have like the finest cheeks in all of comicdom.
He does.
Oh, we know.
His butt is infamous and is recognizable enough that people know him even when he's masked.
It's been a while since we talked about this, surprisingly.
It is surprising. We talked about it every episode for a while there.
I mean, the cakes are real.
The cakes are real. Dick does get all the best lines in this, I feel like. He's just gets to do all of the like punches, all of the themes come out of his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, like the scenes between him and Bruce were so good.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning of the book, it starts with all these villains. Did you guys notice anyone that is worth noting in that crowd of villains?
It was just kind of fun to see all of them. Oh yeah, Professor Pig.
Professor Pig. You mentioned like right on that first splash page, and Two-Face. There's a kind of whole host of the Riddler there looking like a bandana and just some tattoos on his head. Like
Calendar Man was there.
Oh, yeah.
I thought Calendar Man was obscure before we did this podcast, and he's been in Talmud like 5 of the ones we've read.
Yeah, he's popped up a lot, and I loved Professor Pig's like homemade pig mask in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Flamingo was in the background.
Was Flamingo the face eater in the background?
Yep.
I can't believe I missed him.
Someone with pink hair, so I'm assuming that was him.
Right.
And they even had like, I don't know. I don't want to. There's a fat bearded person that I'm pretty sure is from the Batman
Morrison
and Robin
run.
book.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's from Morrison.
Yeah,
I don't know that character had a name though.
I don't know. I just know Jim Gordon was like.
Jim Gordon was not great with the sensitivity in that one. Yeah.
No. I mean, that whole scene in Arkham, with this kind of brawl. I think it's pretty interesting. I enjoy it quite a bit as a way of. I mean, I'm always coming at this volume, in this issue in particular, like with the idea that, this is after 713 issues, from 1940 on, we get a new Batman #1, and what the pressure that's kind of like laid on trying to do something that's sort of worthy of that kind of reboot.
I was shook when it showed the Joker fighting with Batman. I was like, oh, okay, the Joker wants to be the one to kill him.
I thought of you, TJ, when because knowing that was not going to end up being the Joker, I was like, TJ is reading this and freaking out.
Well, okay, I reread this. I still was very, very shocked about things that I know I had read before but forgotten.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I read it too. There were definitely a few things I forgot as well.
Right. So at this point, is Dick Grayson the only person to have cosplayed both Batman and Joker in this universe?
Good point. That's a very good
Probably.
point. It's so interesting that moment and that reveal is something that I keep returning to about this first, particularly this first issue.
Yeah.
Is how much it feels like I'm watching a television pilot.
Yeah.
Like there are a number of twists in it, and we're talking about within the 22 or so pages of a single issue, and it manages to give us a pretty good synthesis of like all of Batman writ large, right? So we get in the scene that we were just talking about a kind of like cameo of all these villains,
right.
And yet this arc isn't going to be about any of them really, so we get new villains. We get a kind of like fundamental existential question: what is Gotham?
Yes.
That the book tries to wrestle with, and it gives us an answer that is satisfying. So I mean, I got to the end of this. I mean, man, if you were watching this on Netflix, you are going to binge that series.
100%. Yes.
Right. This was a better pilot than the Batman and Robin Batman Reborn pilot that we also discussed in our first book talk episode.
Oof, yeah, absolutely. And we pretty quickly soon after get a scene with all of the current, Bat kids, Sans, Jason, getting ready for a gala, and they're having their banter that, like, I think in one panel establishes each character's sort of place in the family.
Yeah, I love it. I love
Right?
it's
like
so fun.
it's Bruce is like trying to manage his children, and Dick is being, quippy, and Damian is being like a total a-hole
Right.
to Tim.
Yeah,
And he-
insufferable Damian.
Insufferable.
Right.
He says we always joke about how Tim is the Robin everybody forgets, and this volume definitely lays that home like 5 different times, which I will bring up when they happen for sure. But this one, he has face recognition to remember who you are.
He's using it to remember who you are. Great. That's that's pretty god tier, like, shade. Like, that's
it really is. But it's cute. It's interesting because they're all like at each other a little bit, but it's a cute scene too, because as Damian is saying this, Tim is fixing his collar. Which I just think is such a cute little detail. He's like, basically, I wish you were dead. Anyway, let me fix your collar.
Right. And it's even in that scene, what's so apparent, and it's such the beauty of the information we get visually and the information we get written, and the way those things are working in concert with one another. It's so clear that of those Robins, Damian is the only one who grew up rich like Bruce.
Yes.
The rest of them had a whole other childhood where they were, Tim and Dick had a kind of, proletariat childhood, before they get indoctrinated in this. But Damian's been a, little, like, rich little SOB from forever,
Honestly.
So it's interesting that in that scene, and this is kind of apparent, right? Because they all sort of look alike, right?
Yes.
This is a kind of meta joke that they all are kind of versions of Bruce. They're like 100%. What Bruce could have been. You're looking at the multiverse almost,
Yeah.
Bruce and Dick looked so much alike in this.
They really did. They all did, though. Seeing them lined up like that, I was like, huh.
I was like, I've had this dream before. Someone at one point mentioned Alfred's School of Acting, and I'm like, again, I keep bringing up Dick Batman and Robin, and like, there's this whole speech Alfred gives to Dick about, you're a theater man, Batman's just a part to play. So, I was flashing back to that during this too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I mean, like I said, I think that's another just we managed to get a majority of the mythos, right? We get the role that Alfred plays in being this, second father for Bruce, but also being someone who can, cut through the bull,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really does. Yeah.
And we have Vicky Vale introduce Lincoln March, and since playing the Batman Telltale games, I have PTSD anytime Vicky Vale approaches me at a party.
It's true. It's true. It's funny that you mentioned that, because the Lincoln March story at this point reminded me a lot of the Harvey Dent story from that game, where it's like there's something interesting that I think Snyder handles pretty well in this. The way that Bruce tries to get involved in politics, and it like constantly is a thing he just should not do. 100% of the candidates that Bruce endorses will be villains.
Yeah,
it's the ultimate death flag. They're
like, oh no, please do not endorse me, sir. No.
I mean, that's
Lincoln March in one of the issues, I think in number 2, is like, I don't want your money, I just want your vote. It's like, that's not the thing you want, buddy. Like,
no, get his money, but don't ever take a public endorsement. Just don't do it.
I loved Bruce at the party just casually into his hand coughing, "Let Breeding go."
Yeah, right.
I was like, what? How did they not notice?
That was really funny. That whole device, it feels like maybe he could have made that whole device subtler.
Right.
Like, Siri, please read the lips of the cops.
I love the art style here.
Me too. I was just about to say something about that as well, and just how much it seems like Capullo and Snyder are having fun in the medium. Like in that same moment, TJ, that you're mentioning, where he's like, lip reading go. We get just that like single panel in the middle of Lincoln March's mouth,
Yes.
like a Little Shop of Horrors, big mouth,
Yes.
just saying Bruce, and there's just such a way in which this this feels very comic book-y,
Yeah.
and in the best way, right?
Yeah.
Like that would be difficult, I think. This wasn't like it's like a meta script for a film, even though it does feel so much like a TV pilot. There are just things that are happening in the visual art style that feel like it couldn't have been anything but a comic book, and I love that so much about it.
Yeah, I like that, you point out it feels like Snyder is having fun with the story. And I think that's true because we get, it is still a dark Batman in many ways, but it is not gritty, Batman at all. There's a lot more like emotional range in this story than I think a lot of the ones that came immediately before the New 52 had in them. We get a
Grant Morrison.
Grant Morrison. We get a smiling Batman. Like I actually wrote down at one point, I was like, he smiled. Because it's so rare in the ones we've been reading, because this is our first one for the pod that's from the New 52, and we've been reading a lot of the darker, grittier ones, and it was shocking when he smiled.
Yeah, Batman has a sense of humor, although
he makes jokes.
Yeah, exactly. He's not humorless, and it makes all the difference, right?
It sure does.
Yeah, this was my favorite Bruce Wayne that we've read.
Me too.
Like his narration here there was a lot of narration, but I never felt like I was uninterested in it because he was just, his thoughts were so interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's that some of that narration, some of that like voiceover like quality where you get something that you're reading, but in contrast, you see Batman doing something out in the world.
Yes.
Sometimes they end up being a kind of metaphor, like a visual metaphor, and you get a joke, right? Like you get, we're saying something about how people are answering the finish this sentence, what Gotham is, right? And you only have 3 words, and he's like, 2 black masks as he's punching a guy with a tattoo, in his face. There's a lot of that way in which just really making use of different ways to give you information and exposition, right? In a way that doesn't feel like such a bore. And I really enjoy. I think you're right, CJ, to talk about the voice, right? The voice of Bruce Wayne talking about himself and talking about his city. He just feels like more complex.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that whole beginning piece of the Gotham is. I cracked up when he was like, sometimes it's teenagers just being dumb, and I was like, 100% Jason Todd has called in. He's one of the people.
And we have Bruce being like, the Court of Owls are not real. I just know it. And I'm like, we've done this before. We've done this before, Bruce.
It's my favorite thing. The one you're referring to is the what is it? The League of Shadows, which is not the League of Assassins, which is the other group he believed didn't exist. It's like, Scully levels of denial at this point. I'm like, why would you not think that this is real, sir?
I love when they find the DNA under the victim's fingernails, and it's Dick's DNA, and then we have Bruce being like, explain this to me, and we get this long explanation from Dick, and then Dick's like, you already know this, don't you?
You already checked the surveillance footage, didn't you?
He goes, Dick, you know me better than anyone. Of course
I did. Yeah.
I love that for a minute he's pretending he trusts him. He's like, of course I trust you. And Dick's like, no.
It's so funny because he goes, you checked the footage, didn't you? And Batman goes, of course I checked the footage. The repetition is so funny.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a joke out of sitcom, right? Like you would see that in like Modern Family, or something like that.
So do you think Bruce was trying to be funny in that moment?
No, I don't. I mean, I would say no. I think
no, I don't think so either.
I think he's being. I think the situation is funny, right? But I think he is. I don't think he's cracking a joke. I think he is matter of fact, right? Which makes it funny. That's what makes it funny.
Yeah, he takes himself dead serious.
Yeah, he has no idea why this is a fucked up thing to do. He's just like, yeah, why wouldn't you?
He's being practical, you know.
Trust but verify, but like
Yes.
cross out the trust.
Well, and this is something that comes up. I mean, he is deeply. I mean, it depends on how he's written. Like you can read him as deeply paranoid, right?
Right.
That he has, scenarios for how to take down all of his friends, right? Like all of his superhero friends, should the need arise. Why do you think that would not apply also to his own family if they're compromised in some way, right? He has it for himself. This is such an oddball thing, but he has it for himself in the Grant Morrison run. Like, if I get compromised, I've got a separate psychological identity, just tucked in there,
just hidden away. This is kind of like the way he has kryptonite in his, utility belt, apparently at all times, just in case, right? Batman is the essence of, I don't think I'll have to use this, but I want to make sure I have it. Just
his purse is full of so many things. He's that friend in the friend group.
He is the mom friend. He's like, I've got this. I've got that.
Yeah.
Many of the Bruce and Lincoln scenes reminded me of Batman Hush. Like, it's been a while, but it seemed very similar.
I did, talking about the things we forgot, I forgot that Lincoln March was supposed to potentially be his brother.
Yeah.
So one of the notes that I have in here is, why did they make all the adults look exactly like Bruce?
I'm telling you.
And I got to the end and I was like, oh.
Right. So that was one of the few things that I remembered clearly. And the whole time reading, I was like, I really hope there's a different ending this time around.
Oh, you didn't like that twist?
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak on it a little bit. I mean, because it is getting a little ahead of it, but I mean, there's a quality, I think, to particularly the first 3 issues where they read so. I mean, they read so, like I said, so clearly. Like, we end on a cliffhanger, right? Yeah. We end on a kind of very cinematic thing that would have got you from month to month, because this is a periodical, right? To want to read the next issue. But they also are pretty good standalone stories. Yeah. So like the Batman issue 1 ending with the answer to that question, Gotham is a mystery, right? Yes. Is delivered pretty deftly by Harvey Bullock and his interaction with him, and in the narration that this could have been a one-shot, right? This could have been a one-shot issue that doesn't actually go anywhere. We just end with that idea, right? Yeah. So there's a part of me that thinks that whatever the pitch was, right, that Snyder and Capullo put together, a lot of that was like, you might only get one shot of it, so you might as well write an opening issue that could be a standalone juggernaut, and it feels very much like that. But the subsequent issues, both 1, 2, and 3, all have that feel to me. Like, they could be standalone issues. And that's a good thing about them, but a bad thing about that is they take on a quality of, well, actually, there are 7 gargoyles, and then there's another gargoyle, there's a very much, but actually, but the secret history of, but like that kind of quality to that, which is kind of part and parcel with the idea of a reboot, but.
That is fair. The gargoyle one definitely cracked me up. I was like, excuse me, what?
Yeah.
Secret extra gargoyle.
Right. I mean, it's both fun, but also fanboy, you know, like that, but actually quality is, I'm sure you have all experienced that before. Right.
A time or two.
So I know this book isn't like straight up horror, but like not like Arkham Asylum was, but like this plotline was so creepy.
It was. I think it does a good job of getting the gothic into Gotham. Like it really. There's something very eerie about the bird's nest in all of the homes and stuff like that. It's good. And the poem. I think the poem is inherently very creepy.
Right. And like, but let's be real. Him finding that nest on the 13th floor was a lucky guess. I was like,
that's the problem with writing a character who's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, right? They talk about this when people, do interpretations of Sherlock Holmes, where it's like, the characters is inherently supposed to be smarter than the writers. And so,
Right.
Unless you're very careful, it's going to look like a lucky guess because it's really hard to think like that.
Yeah, or to not have it feel cliche, or not have it feel like contrived.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's one painting in that hidden room where the owls are all blonde and they look like something out of The Purge or the Trump family.
I 100%. I definitely wrote down The Purge too because I was like, wow, they're ready.
Yeah.
This is the family that would be introducing it as a good idea.
Yeah, and there's such a. I mean, I think part of the horror that kind of like thriller horror kind of aesthetic, I think is also coming through in the sort of insistence on the iconography of a mask, right?
Yes.
So we know, like, obviously Batman and his mask is cow, but the kind of shape of the Court of Owls masks have a kind of dehumanizing quality to them,
Yeah.
and then even we were just talking about Dick Grayson, he's wearing a kind of like digital mask of the Joker, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know how much you all are like deep in the New 52, but like Detective Comics, the reboot of that one comes out before Batman 1. And in that, like, there is this incident where the Joker sort of like carves his own face off. So like there's a bit of a nod to that in like Dick Grayson wearing the Joker's face that is alluding to that other thing.
Right.
So some of it is this idea of kind of dehumanizing, creepy masks where you can't tell who is who, right? Like you can't tell friend from foe, you can't tell who to trust. We sometimes we can't, it'll get to it too. Batman can't even trust his own senses. And so that's a deeply anxious narrative space to be in.
Yes.
For sure.
100%. I think that's interesting too. I love the Court of Owls as a villain. And I think that one of the interesting things that sets it apart from any other villain that Batman faces is that they are identityless, with the exception of Lincoln March, which we'll get into. We don't know who any of them are, and it doesn't matter. And I think that's really interesting. 'Cause a lot of times Batman stories are really marred in the psyche of the villain, but you don't get that here. You don't get to know anything about them, except that they are rich and horrible, which is enough.
Yeah, I mean,
that's plenty.
but also it's deep in iconography of like secret cabals, so like it has read uncritically, this is like red meat for QAnon folks, like who would see, the Court of Owls not as villains, but as sort of like this, protectors of, or whatever, so it's odd. There's a I think it's interesting, TJ, when you brought up the fact that they're all blonde. I wonder if Scott Snyder's trying to not fall into some anti-Semitic tropes about secret cabals.
To avoid the whole one world order conspiracies. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I assume the painting I was talking about, it was probably just like a family unit that was all, like they were all blonde because they're related. But I think there's something to read into there for sure.
I think so too. Yeah. I love a good secret society story. I find those fascinating. I think that's why this one connects to me so much.
Chris loves a cult.
I love a cult. What can I say? I'm here for the cult stuff.
There's a part where Dick tries to do an intervention with Bruce, and he's like, "Did Jim tell you this?" And he's like a scorned lover. I love it.
There's so many times in this book where Dick is trying to play it cool, and Batman's like, "Okay, who have you been talking to?" And one time it's Alfred, and one time it's Jim, and it's just like, apparently they have a newsletter, and they're like, "Here's how Batman's doing."
Right.
Like,
2 of you shall betray me tonight.
Right.
It's true.
I love how he's like, I looked into this when I was 8, so of course they're not real.
That part
Right.
cracked me up. So this is when I wrote, Tim Drake, he's not, because at 8 years old, he missed this, but 8-year-old Tim Drake could have found it out. We know this. He
Right.
found out Batman.
Like to be
Right.
fair, he said he's tried to pick it back up like here and there as he got older, but I'm like,
Right.
did you though? Because you're really just talking about when you were 8.
I know, and Gotham, I love the show Welcome to Night Vale, and the premise of that show is that every conspiracy theory is true, which is honestly, you could just apply to Gotham. Like there's alligators in the sewer, well, croc, but and every secret society is real, all of them.
Also, the fact that Bruce was stuck up in that attic for a week.
What?
Yep.
That was pretty drastic.
What was that? That took me so off guard. I've completely deleted that part from my brain, apparently. As I was reading it, I was just like, what?
Yeah, and it's so strange because Bruce is trying to teach Dick a lesson about not letting your emotions, cloud your judgment in that moment. That the sort of moral of that whole thing is like one part, hey, I did look into this, but some of it is like if you let your emotions get into it, you'll
die.
You'll die. You'll cloud your judgment. All of those things. But it's so. I mean, this is what is Bruce's problem, right? Like,
yes,
he doesn't recognize emotions as a sign of doing well. Like if you feel something, that's even if it's pain, that's a good thing, right? Like,
there's later on, I don't totally remember when this conversation between him and Dick happens, but Dick is basically like, your main problem is that you're not trying to protect other people, you're trying to protect you from you and your emotions. And I was just like, yep, that's Batman right there.
What did you guys think of the labyrinth sequence?
I had to revisit this a little bit because I was like, oh, they're doing something interesting with having to shift the orientation on the page. And I was like, man, did I just get a misprint? Like comic when I read this the first time. But is this true in the trade paperback volume where there are panels that are like they're like upside down? Yeah or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, we discovered this is true in the trade paperback, but not the e-version, because I was reading the trade paperback and TJ was reading the e-version, and he sends me this text and he's like, did I have a false memory of this going upside down at one point?
She's like, no, it's when he's escaping. And I'm like flipping through on my phone. I'm like, I wrote her again. I'm like, Chris, I swear to God, I cannot find it. I was losing it. And I happened to have a physical copy right next to me. So, finally picking it up to check, I was like, you know what? It is just the ebook. It was right side up.
Yeah. But this part, I loved it. The first time I saw it, so like I said, this was early in my reading comics at all. And it like took my breath away, that moment, and how disorienting it is trying to read it. Cause it goes sideways and that's like, okay, this is a little weird. Then it's upside down. That's pretty strange. But then it's backwards where you have to read it the other direction, right? And it's so disorienting trying to follow it, but that's the way that his mind is. He's disoriented, and I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, well, I love reading a good ebook or a good comic on my phone. You really lose part of that reading experience if you don't read the physical copy here.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, for sure. I mean, and again, I think this is a kind of testament to something that would be difficult to adapt and not seem either obtuse or just silly, like on the screen.
Yeah.
Because because you have to, reading a physical copy, in order to make sense of it, you have to literally shift the comic, right? You have to turn it like a steering wheel. And so you get this sort of like, very obvious metaphor of reorientation, right? Like you have to reorient yourself in the way that that Bruce is trying to, struggle with this labyrinth that he's in and being hunted and not being able to trust what he's feeling and seeing. And so to make you do something physical, in order to experience that, I think is quite deft, quite, a kind of letting the form do something that only comics can do.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like, that's, that just feels so nice to be a part of that. Like almost like you've been let in on a secret, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it is like a direct line to Batman's psyche, and I love that. I was gonna say I gotta hand it to the Court of Owls. I love a villain with a solid aesthetic. And man, that labyrinth.
For sure, right?
What was there's like I was like really paying attention to the random little details. There's like half of a ship that's lodged in a wall, like an actual tall ship. Like, are they trying to imply they came over on the Mayflower? Like, what is this? Did anyone else notice this? Like,
yeah, it's like half museum, half you know,
right?
You know, BDSM dungeon.
Like, 100%.
It's wild in there. It's tough in them streets, you know.
I loved his cape getting more and more tattered throughout those couple issues.
Yes, cape as way to tell emotional health.
Right. I mean, that's very big. I mean, this is the other thing I was going to say. Like, there are certain issues in this you know, for 1 through 11 that have like different that I recognize different aesthetics, and one of them clearly is like video game aesthetics. There's definitely like what you just said about like cape as an indicator of how it's doing. It's like that's straight out of like playing video games, right?
Yeah. Can you imagine trying to go through the labyrinth in a video game? Oh, sounds amazing.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like, and then you get that, there you see it much more, I think, as you move into the attack on Wayne Manor.
Yeah,
where you just get like mobs of villains that you're trying to like take out while you're trying to get back into the house. To make sure Alfred doesn't get dropped.
I know, the most important thing. Alfred must be safe at all times.
That's right.
Chris, you might get your wish because there's an Arkham Knights game or Gotham Knights game coming out.
Is it have the owls?
So it's Batman dies, and it's about Jason, Dick, Barbara, and Tim trying to protect Gotham, and supposedly the Court of Owls are like the main villains.
Oh, okay. I'm here for that.
Yeah, but I'm skeptical that Bruce is actually dead in that. Like, I think this is this is a bit of like,
are they ever?
How much do you want to bet he's going to be the Talon or some bullshit?
Of course, like some brainwashed, of course, But
or they think he's the Talon, but it's Lincoln March because they look the exact same.
Oh god! Jeez. But they're not brothers.
But they're not, or are they?
or he's Thomas Wayne Jr., whatever like alias he goes by. It's so wild, but like there's a very strange moment in which I just feel like the first, I'd say 4 or 5 issues so tightly controlled.
Yes.
In a good way, very, very, very well written. And then like, does Batman really need to backhand Dick to show him that he's Moeller? Moeller has a court that he's supposed to have been one of the Court of Owls. Like, that's what I'm like. We may not have jumped the shark yet, but we are on the ramp. Like we're right on the ramp.
I was doing such mental gymnastics to try to understand why that was necessary. And I was like, did he think he was mind control? Like, what did he think? What? And then I was like, no, it's just Bruce being emotionally constipated. That's what it is. To
be fair, he had been stuck in a labyrinth for God knows how long. He was a little on edge.
I guess. Yeah, I guess.
Meanwhile, Dick's on the floor thinking back to that time from All-Star Batman and Robin.
Right.
That's what I thought of immediately. And the meme one, meme that goes around.
Right.
Right.
I was like, why are we like this? Bruce.
Oh, I do have to backtrack because there was a nice scene with Damian, with Jim he was like, sad that Bruce was gone, and it was such a good moment.
That's a sweet scene for both of them. Jim Gordon, his only friend is a bat he has to call with the flashlight, and he's just sitting there being sad. He's like, I've shown this light and my friend's not coming.
And little Damian. Damian's barely in this. Like, I'm shocked he didn't. We should have had like a reunion scene.
Well, I think this is an event, right? So all of the other comics have Court of Owls stuff going on, and we just get a hint of it. We could, at some point we could read that, but it's really very confusing, I will say, like all of the DC events.
Yeah.
It's a
I
mess.
skimmed it the other day thinking like, oh, maybe I'll actually read it this time. And
it's fun, but it's a mess, I will say. They did not keep it tight for the crossover.
It was very jarring. And the volume I
sure.
had like has a couple issues that were in this collection. So it seems weird.
I mean, speaking of confusing, right? There's this introduction of Harper Row.
I love Harper
as a character, but it is the most bizarre bit of like okay, so like issue 6 ends with Batman escaping the labyrinth, but he can't quite make it out because there's like frozen lake kind of business, or can't break the glass. And Glenn Weldon talks a little bit about this as a moment of like postmodern Batman, in that he gives up, sort of like succumbs to the weight of that. It's very anti like Justice League Unlimited Batman, whose superpower is to never give up, but but in the very next issue, right, he's rescued by Harper Row, but we don't see it. Like we just see him waking up with like car battery cables attached to his nipples, just like shocked up. And I mean,
and then he's like, for the last time, leave me alone.
Yeah, but like, when was the first time? Like what? Like nobody saw it his first time.
It's so wild. Poor Harper. I don't know what Scott Snyder's intention was with this character. She has a bigger part in Batman Eternal, but also not that much bigger. And then she basically is gone. She's been like sentenced to, the other world that Tim Drake was sent to or something. I don't know. But like she never shows up, but she's so interesting. And it makes me so sad that he creates this character and then does nothing with her ever.
I was also confused about her appearance. So from what I could tell researching, this issue where she pops up is her first appearance where it's notable, but I think it's issue 12, the one right after the Court of Owls saga.
Yeah. Yes.
There's a whole issue about Harper, which there might be a scene where it shows her reviving Batman. I can't remember. But it also shows that she was in the party in the first issue of this book. Yes.
Yeah, stealing
why?
stuff.
Stealing. Okay.
Yeah, she has a cameo.
I forgot that. I love Harper. One day, maybe someone somewhere will decide to give her a like mini series, and it will be beautiful. But until that day, I will be sad.
No, just her popping up here was really, really, really weird.
I also, why Batman is such a jerk to anyone that isn't the 4 Robins that he picked. He's just like he's kind of this way to Duke Thomas at first too, and definitely Stephanie Brown. He's just like, please, you are not one of the Robins that looks like identical carbon copies of me, so I don't want it.
His internalized misogyny coming out.
Right.
Dick has a really good line where he says, "They're not Gotham, and neither are you."
Yes.
Like, damn, you tell him.
I love that. That conversation is so interesting. Where Batman's like, "They have shattered my whole view. I thought Gotham was me," and I was like, "Okay, Batman." Okay. So that I love that Dick basically does, he's like, "Okay, boomer," to him. It's like, can you please check yourself? Right. You are not, you're like the 1%. You are not Gotham.
Yeah, it's something I appreciate in the whole run is how fallible and how fragile Batman is.
Yeah.
And it's not Bane breaking his back. It's not like Mad Hatter mind control or Scarecrow fear gas. It's like he's just a fragile person. But he's not, because I get annoyed sometimes too with a kind of overly, well, is he a psychopath or is he really? I mean, all those questions I just feel like are boring.
I agree.
Like he's just complex, right? Like he's because sometimes, I mean, just like like we said before, I think that can just be a reinforcement saying he's a psychopath or is he insane, or just want other ways to rarefy him and make him like kind of like unfallible. He's unfallibly insane.
Yeah.
But I'm very interested in this. Just like you said, he's like Dick saying that you're not Gotham, they're not Gotham, or you're not Gotham, and that's such a callback to the beginning, to the first issue where he's like, I'm kind of partial to when people say Gotham is Batman. You know, he
Right.
like openly admits his own ego.
Yeah.
There,
There's
which
even
is
a moment
you know,
too where he's talking to Alfred and he's like, I've been an arrogant fool. And Alfred's like, yup.
Yeah. Alfred is just like the Kermit the Frog meme sipping tea, like in that
He's like,
moment.
I'm glad you figured it out. Ding, 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 we have a winner. But I think you're right. I think Batman, and I think, you know, when we talked about Cape Crusade last time, this is brought up by Glenn Weldon as well. Batman is the least interesting when he is infallible. And he is the most interesting when he is messy. And I think that's what I love about Snyder, because he's not one thing ever. He's not always a terrible father, though he often is. Sometimes he's very sweet and they care about him a lot. You know, we don't see it as much in this one, but in the Death of the Family, there's a lot of him trying really hard to be a good dad. You know, not necessarily succeeding. And then there's, you know, this idea of how much he loves Gotham, but is also in some ways more disconnected from it than he realizes. I think it's interesting that he gets to be a multitude of things in this story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he feels oddly, I think contemporary, right?
Yes.
I think he feels much more the way that what I enjoy about this is Snyder makes him real in a way that feels like sensible to the early, you know, to 2011 when it's written.
Yeah.
But he does it without attacking heroes in general, so it doesn't become Watchmen. Okay, it doesn't become like a kind of meta commentary on what comics or heroes or anything mean. It is oddly very optimistic, like we were saying last podcast about the Cape Crusade. I mean, I think this is a very optimistic Batman, even in his fragility. The fact that he tries, right, like you're saying, he tries to be a good dad. That's, you only try if you think the effort is worth it. You know,
right? And talking about, you know, so we also read Tom King's run. There are moments when the question that the first volume of Tom King is asking, is there a point to trying if Gotham's always going to be bad? And Snyder never asked that, because there is. That's just an accepted fact. There is a point to trying, even if it's always going to be hard. And it's not always going to be easy to try, but it's always going to be the thing that Batman believes in doing, even if he doesn't see what the end goal could possibly be.
Yeah, I think in some ways too. I think that's why this whole volume, this arc of Court of Owls feels so progressive to me too. It feels forward thinking. We get a new villain. We get a new, like, you know, kind of villain and a new mythos introduced to think about. How, you know, so, you know, it's what is Batman's enemy in the Court of Owls? It's history. Right, he's fighting history. He's fighting like his own understanding of history,
right?
Which feels very also 2020, like how we are like reckoning with some of the legacies of many things that we may have understood about how history enacts itself upon various individuals. And I think that's a, you know, I mean, kudos to these guys. You know, they really were tapping into something that I think makes this not feel dated.
Right. I think I really like that portion that is, I feel like it's Alfred's father is writing a letter. Was this in the version?
Oh, yeah.
Is that just in the trade paperback? Remind me.
So it's not a part of the 1 through 11 issues, but it's kind of a tacked on special epilogue type thing at the end. I think it was the annual. I could be wrong.
Yep, that's right.
It's relevant though.
Yeah, I really, really like that part, because we see Martha Wayne fighting an uphill battle, you know, and she thinks it's against the mayor's office, and we of course learn it's the owls that she's fighting, but she's still like, you know, trying to make the world better. And there's this tension that Jarvis, Alfred's father, notes between Thomas Wayne, who thinks that, you know, why don't we kind of be happy, like we can do little things to make it better, and Martha Wayne, who's like, that's not enough, we have got to make systemic change. And the idea of pushing on that, you know, there's a line, I think it's even in that part, I think it's Jarvis that says, anytime we push for systemic change, there will be pushback, but the fight is worth it. And I think that's the thesis of this story.
I agree. I mean, it's a it's you know, it's not cynical, you know.
No.
And that allows us to have some fun with some things. I mean, we also, you know, earlier, I mean, like I said, I mean, I mentioned portions that feel like a video game. I mean,
yeah,
Batman jumps in an Iron Man suit and starts rocking it, you know, like rocking, you know, various talons to their final resting places.
I laughed my ass off at that scene. I was just like, okay, you just had this, just laying around.
And at one point, in the Batcave, they crush somebody with the lucky penny, and Alfred's like, without irony, your lucky penny. And like, come on, y'all.
The dinosaur is apparently remote controlled and named Fido.
Oh my gosh! So Chris, we specifically have been talking about the penny and the T-Rex for a while now.
Yes.
To the point where I'm like, we were unintentionally foreshadowing this.
I know, I died. We just, like, we talked about that at the last the episode before last, right? Where we were noting that those are back in the cave and the ones we were reading.
Yes.
And then this one, it's like, let's use them. I'm surprised he didn't like cut somebody with the Joker card, you know? Like,
right? I mean, he does stab a guy with a weather vane off the roof, you know?
His weather vane is a bat. I lost my mind in that one.
It felt like very good payoff.
It did.
To me.
I loved it. His whole home is bat themed, and it cracks me up that nobody has figured out that he's Batman.
I love when he slides down the chimney like he's Santa Claus and just ends up in the Batcave.
Yes, there's
how
also
long is that chimney? Like,
where is the fireplace in the Batcave? Why haven't we seen that? I also love there's a joke at one point where Dick Grayson is like, "Oh, you don't have to climb through the ventilation shafts anymore."
Right. Oh, right, for the corner. Like, because he has a camera installed in the corners.
He's like, you're gonna miss it. Admit
it. Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, there's just a lot of. I mean, I think a good analogy. I don't know if you all are Star Wars fans, but
yes.
Oh yeah.
There are portions of this that felt like I was that reminded me of The Mandalorian.
Yes.
And that, you know, you could so clearly tell that this was written by folks who were fans of Batman as children who grew up to be creators. Right. And this is true. This is Dave Filoni, you know, for The Mandalorian and for Rebels and Clone Wars, et cetera, et cetera. And so they understand in both of those instances, and for Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo here, they understand what makes Batman fun. You know, what makes him interesting, and where you can sort of like push the, you know, where you can like become very maximal, where like we're going to throw everything in the kitchen sink and the dinosaur and the penny all into the same action sequence, because, you know, who doesn't, I mean, it's I mean, on one hand you might say it's like fan service, right? But they handle it like in a way that feels like integrated into the flow of the narrative. So I'm just like, yeah, they get it. They get what, you know, what would be a kind of like stand up and shout moment if you were watching this on film.
I think that's what makes it, because, like, you know, this story gets very dark. The labyrinth stuff is dark, you know, the emotional toll it pays is dark, and certainly some of the stories that come beyond this run are really dark, but they don't feel like the kind of dark that we've seen before. Again, cough cough, Grant Morrison, because they also have the fun, because they're also light moments and sweet moments and, you know, character bits that let you breathe between them. And I think that's why I enjoy this more than many of the other ones we've read.
And we know Bruce's favorite Marvel movie is Age of Ultron because he has his own Hulkbuster suit.
He sure does.
I mean, and this is something. There's such a it gets pretty. When you look at the new 52, the 52 issues that Snyder wrote,
Yeah.
they read very well as a self-contained kind of story. And there's some really interesting, that robotic Batman, Hulkbusters, like this kind of thing sort of comes up from time to time in the run.
Right.
But I really think that this is such an important introduction to what Batman is and can be. And that, the only thing that I think, if I had a caveat that I find unsatisfying about this arc is, I probably could have done without the kind of overlay of a kind of Cain and Abel kind of, like master plot, like trope, and that, Lincoln March, turns out to be someone who thinks that he is, Bruce's neglected younger brother and all of that business. It turns it into a kind of story that we've read before,
Right. Hush.
Yeah, right.
Like literally.
Exactly. Yeah, right. I mean, so that portion of it didn't feel like, I was like, oh, okay. Like, like I'm more interested in the Court of Owls as something new than the potential that he's got a brother. Like,
I can't tell you enough how much I hate the brother plot line.
I agree. Yeah. I think that's why I forgot it, right? Like, it's so basic as to be unmemorable. I like that at the end they don't answer it. I find that fun, that Alfred's kind of like, hey Bruce, we don't have to solve every mystery, and Bruce is like, have you met me?
Right.
But I liked that character bit. But you're right, the whole, like, I also did feel it was his detecting in this scene was a little hand wavy when he's like, of course I figured it out, and I was like, how again? Excuse me. How did you figure it? How
Again,
did you get
lucky
to this?
He turned around and just happened to be looking at the same brooch on his mother, and it's like, yeah, but what if you hadn't looked at that?
Right. I also, it's I get what they were trying to go for with the whole him seeing the reflection of Gotham and he is the mirror. That part was a little silly. When he's flying him around the city, I was just like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a right at the end there, the story starts to go off the rails a bit,
a tiny bit,
just a bit, but there's so much good there that's
happening,
like leading up to it, that it's definitely an arc that I would recommend
100%,
to just about anyone. I think there's a lot there that there to love. Even if you're not necessarily a fan of Batman, this is I think a good Batman story to read. Like you were saying, Chris, if you're just jumping in, it's a good place to start.
For sure. As many problems as I have with the ending overall, I do like the ending scene between Dick and Bruce, where Bruce says, "You keep saving me every day," and then we have Dick saying, come on, Gotham's a little bit Batman. And like, it was cute.
That was a cutesy. I specifically like, because we don't see it in this, but Dick goes off and has his own adventure in his own comic where he's dealing with the fact that he almost was a Talon and all of this guilt, and he kind of is like, if it wasn't for Batman, I would have become a Talon. And that's exactly what Bruce is responding to here, where he is like, no, you wouldn't have. That's not you. I did not save you, you saved me, which I think is so powerful. Yes, I cried.
And Scott Snyder's like, damn, I want to be writing that Nightwing series right now.
Yeah, it's a great moment of vulnerability, right? Where we get to see, for all the lack of emotion we were talking about earlier, here's a pretty I mean, that's a pretty well-adjusted conversation between
100%.
in a nice moment of intimacy between two men, right? Whether you read it as father and son or as or other permutations, it's a kind of it's a kind of masculine. There's a permission there,
Mhm.
right? That's sort of given to say, hey, almost as if, everybody reading it, you could do this too with your loved ones. You could be as vulnerable, and you don't have to be attacked by a whole cabal of supervillains to get there.
Yes.
You can just be honest with the ones you love.
And
Love
that
it.
final page with the close up on his eye, that was a great panel to end on.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
agree.
kind of like ends on surveillance, huh? I'll always be watching.
Yes.
And now, what would you guys rate this 1 out of 5 batarangs?
This is another 5 batarang for me. I love it. As messy as Lincoln March is, it didn't take away from how much I loved everything else going on in it.
Definitely a 5. Definitely a 5 out of 5 batarangs. It's too. I mean, we're talking about something that's almost a decade old now.
Yeah.
And it just really holds up. I can't.
100%.
Definitely getting the 5 batarangs.
Yeah.
You guys are making me seem like a stickler.
What'd you give it?
So before I say, if we were just rating the first half of the book, before Harper saves him, I would have given it a solid 5. But I have many issues with the brother plot line, and just it was too convoluted, and I felt like we got away from the Court of Owls, and I would have much rather had a battle of wits at the end between him and the group, whereas we kind of lost the court itself when we focused more on Lincoln March.
Yeah.
So if the ending had been a little bit different, I would have given it a solid 5, but 4.5 is where I'm at.
What? You made it sound so bad. You were like, so, and then you took off half
I'm
of a
usually
batarang.
an easy breaker,
an unfolded batarang, right? It's just folded up, 0.5.
No, it's almost nearly perfect.
It is almost nearly perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephen. This has been an absolute blast.
I have had such a great time riding in the Batmobile of your podcast with you both. There's definitely 3 seats in this Batmobile, and I'm glad for it.
And Stephen, where can our listeners find you? And do you have any projects they should be looking out for?
You can find me on Twitter, right there with Alfred and others who would be absolute stars on Twitter. You can find me at SD Leyva, and get all the nerdy content that you could ever imagine. And if you want to read more about what I'm up to, check out the Understudies Handbook, which is my book of poems that came out in October. And I have a column at the Washington Independent Review of Books called Nerd Volta that's all about how anime and manga and comics can teach creative writers about their craft.
And now it's time for the Outsider of the Week. Who is our outsider this week, TJ?
We have someone very near and dear to my heart this week, Chris. The person this week was selected because they had an absolute freak out on Twitter about Bruce Harvey, which I love and you love as well.
Yes.
And this would be at Harvey Dentism, who posted a fan cam of Bruce and Harvey from the Telltale video game, which we talked about with Kent Meadle, of course. And, I sent it to Kent and we were talking about it, and Harvey Dentism just was freaking out and followed us on Twitter, was listening to our episode with Kent. And, they were just making such a huge big deal out of it on Twitter, which they should have. It was a big deal. But it was just so cute, and they deserve it.
I agree. And they were shouting us out to other people to get them to listen as well. So we really appreciate it.
Yep, you deserve it. Thank you so much. And thank you for being a Bruce Harvey shipper with us. We are banding together.
Yes, we will make this happen. Join us next time where we talk to Emily Martin, comics illustrator, about the book
Batman, the Jiro Kuwata Bat Manga, Volume 1 by Jiro Kuwata.
We are so excited for this one. It's such a fun read.
Yeah, after discussing Adam West's Batman show, I'm ready to read this sort of adaptation of it.
And Emily is such a fun person to talk to. People who listen to my other podcasts know that she's been on it a lot of times with me, and I always enjoy talking to her.
Also, the word bat manga, like, come on.
I mean, we had no choice but to do it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Gotham Outsiders. You can find me, Chris, on Twitter at The Myth of Psyche, where I talk about feminism, queerness, and frequently Batman. You can also find me on the podcast Progressively Horrified. And you can find my co-host, TJ,
at TroyFinn2 on Twitter, where I talk about all things book related and occasionally Batman related, although a little bit more frequently nowadays.
And you can find Gotham Outsiders on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at Gotham Outsiders, where we talk about Batman all the time. So join us next time, same bat time, same bat place. Beware the Court of Owls, watches all the time, ruling Gotham from a shadow perch behind granite and lime. They watch you at your hearth, they watch you in your bed. Speak not a whisper word of them, or they'll send the talon for your head. Court of Owls, Court of Owls, Court of Owls will get you. Court of Owls will catch you. Court of Owls will steal you away.